Hello. I just got back in from running, so now I'm like super fucking tired and sweaty. um, so I figured it's a good time as any to just sit down and start talking about Metal Gear because as you want to do, I guess. Because like it's Phantom Pain's coming out next month, so basically the only thing I can think about right now is Metal Gear Solid. I've been trying to like play through the entire series in chronological order. Like I beat one and I beat two, and then I just kind of fell down the hole that is Peace Walker and started upgrading my mother base, and now like everything's at fucking level 99, and the base is constructed, and I got like the fucking stealth camouflage and shit. So like pretty good foretelling of what my time with Phantom Pain's gonna be like, since Phantom Pain's like basically shaping up to just be uh, Peace Walker, but like on consoles, because like one big thing that really hindered, well, not hindered, but I like just to me personally, something that kind of detracts from this game is it was really built to be played on a handheld. Like that's what it was designed for, you know. And Phantom Pain is like it's starting from Peace Walker and like going, okay, let's like just exploit this technology to the fullest instead of being constrained like they were. But anyway, I don't know. I guess I'm just gonna talk randomly about Peace Walker until I run out, not Metal Gear until I run out of shit to say. Internet's turned off right now, so there's nothing really else to do. Fuck. I guess I should start with like where I come from in terms of the series. Like, to me, like in order of worst to best, the series kind of goes like Metal Gear 1 on the MSX, Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 4, then like Metal Gear 2, Peace Walker, Metal Gear 1, and then Metal Gear Solid 3, and then Metal Gear Solid 1, and then Metal Gear Solid 3. So it's MG, MGS2, MGS4, MG2, Peace Walker, MGS1, MGS3. So like MGS3 is like fucking my favorite, and fucking it's everyone's favorite, I guess, for good reason. And what's funny to me is like when I sit down and think about this series, it always occurs to me like if you try and think about these games at like face value, like if you try to approach it as if it's like a logical story being told in sequential order, it makes no fucking sense. And like it's really amusing to me to watch people try and figure it out and put like if you browse the Metal Gear Solid Wikipedia, it's a fucking comedy goldmine because you can see the people just tearing their heads out like this makes no fucking sense. It doesn't fit together. Like the Metal Gear Solid universe is such a hilarious fucking place. It's a place where like the oil crisis was solved in the 1990s. Some guy just created artificial oil, and there's no more problems with oil anymore. That's just been solved forever. And then at the end of the Cold War, all of the major world powers just renounced nuclear weapons forever. That's canon. That's Metal Gear 2. Both of those things were established in the opening fucking narration of Metal Gear 2. That shit's canon. And like fucking holographic technology and artificial fucking intelligence was created in the 1970s. That's just there, and like AI exists. Fucking computers that can teach themselves without fucking human programming just exist casually since the 1970s in the fucking Metal Gear Solid universe. And like fucking nano machines just exist in every, like basically the entire civilized world just is wired with nano machines, and it just constantly monitors their fucking like medical, biological, and emotional state and shit. And, like, it's just so fucking ridiculous. Like, I can't tell if the Metal Gear Solid universe would either be, like, crazy amazing to live in or just absolute hell. Because it's just completely nonsensical. And, like, there's no attempt to keep things straight. There's no attempt to incorporate this shit in a logical capacity. It's just like fucking Hideo Kojima goes like, what? I fucking write what I want. He doesn't give a shit. And, like, I can see that frustrating some people when it comes to this series. Like, there's just no effort taken whatsoever to have, like, a logical story that follows from A to B to C to D to E to E. Fucking, like, that's why playing the series in chronological order, like, starting from 3, and then playing Peace Walker, and then playing Metal Gear 1 and 2, and then MGS1, MGS2, MGS4, makes no fucking sense. Because that's not how these games were made. They weren't made as, like, one big story told in these parts. Like, that reminds me of when I was a kid, my dad used to say, like, well, about George Lucas and Star Wars. Because, as we all know, it was Star Wars Episode 4, 5, and 6, and then the prequels, Episode 1, 2, and 3. And my dad was like, why did he start with Chapter 4? Did he not read the old books? And even at the time, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, he thought that the Star Wars story was a book series, and George Lucas made the movies based off the books, only he didn't read the first 3, and so he started with the 4th. That's what he thought at the time. And even as a kid, I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? And then, of course, I got treated like the idiot. But, like, that's what it reminds me of, because, like, some people do think of it like that. They think, like, this story, like, fucking was written out in its entirety, and it existed, and he just made it, like, this part, then this part, then this part, like it's fucking Quentin Tarantino or something. Only no. Fucking Star Wars was not Episode 4 when it was first made and released. It was made as a singular movie. Just completely in a vacuum. It was made as Star Wars, beginning and the end. Like, they only tacked on Episode 4 when they decided they were gonna do a sequel. Like, that, like, there's no hidden fucking genius to this. They just made these movies as a self-contained story, and then they made another one. That's what the Metal Gear series is like. There was no fucking grand scheme. There was no fucking orchestrated fucking, like, narrative. And he was like, okay, this story only makes sense if we tell this part and then go back in time to the 1960s and tell that as the number 3. Like, that's not how it was made. It was made like, I'm gonna make a Metal Gear game on the MSX. And then that was it. That was the first and last Metal Gear game ever made. And then, like, it became successful on the NES, on a really shitty NES port in America. And so Konami said, well, make a sequel. Just churn one out to capitalize on that popular fucking brand. And, like, didn't have anything to do with Kojima. That Konami said, make a sequel to that American version and sell it in America, because it was popular and people will buy it. Because Konami, fucking paragons of quality, even back then. And then fucking Kojima found out that they made a sequel to his game, and he was like, fuck you, I'm gonna make my own sequel. Like, the story goes that, like, he was on a train like a fucking Japanese train. You know how those are. And a buddy of his was sitting next to him. It was like, "Hey, Kojima-san, they fucking made a sequel to Metal Gear over in America." And he's like, "What? No, this cannot be." And he fucking wrote out the entire like design document of Metal Gear 2 on that fucking train ride, and then made Metal Gear 2 on the MSX. And then that was gonna be the last Metal Gear game. And then eventually they were like, "Hey, let's make a third one." And he's like, "Okay." And they started developing it for like the 3DO, I don't know, like some fucking bullshit. And then the PS1 came out, and they were like, "Hey, let's just make it on that 3D game." He's like, "Sure." And they made that, and it was just full of retcons. Even back in the first fucking Metal Gear Solid game, they were just tacking on retcons where they were like, "Hey, remember when Big Boss told you he was your dad?" And everyone who played Metal Gear 1 was like, Metal Gear 2 was like, "No, that line of dialogue never occurred." It's not even mentioned in like the fucking like backstory, because on fucking Metal Gear Solid 1 there's like backstory or something like that. There's an option that tells you the like cliff notes of Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear 2. And even in that fucking like pamphlet of the story of Metal Gear 2, Big Boss doesn't say shit about being Solid Snake's dad. He just says like, "You won, so now you have to live on the battlefield forever. There can only be one Snake." Anyway. And so then, like, out of nowhere, Solid Snake's like, "Hey, Big Boss said that he was my dad." And it's like, I don't remember that. And they're just like, "Shut up, it happened." So, like, again, even back then, Kojima didn't give a fuck. He was just like, "I'm making this game. Fuck you." The end. And again, Metal Gear Solid 1 was going to be the first and last Metal Gear Solid game. Like, it was basically a remake of Metal Gear 2 anyway. It took a lot of the same what's the word, level design and puzzles, I guess you could call it, and story beats, like beat for beat. It was almost the exact same game as fucking Metal Gear 2. And what's hilarious to me is when you think about it, like the entire Metal Gear Solid series up to 4, like 3 is pretty much where it ends, but like, unless you wanted to be like really broad. But like the entire series up to 3 is Hideo Kojima just remaking the same game over and over again with better technology and a different framing to the story every single time. Like Metal Gear 2 was just like an improvement and retelling of Metal Gear 1. Metal Gear Solid was an improvement and retelling of Metal Gear 2. Metal Gear Solid 2 was, again, and he's just remaking the same game every time and going, "And no, but it can be better again if we do it like this." It's really funny when you like analyze it. And that's what I like doing. I like analyzing these games in terms of like on a meta-textual level, you know? Like, I like putting on my little pretentious hat and be like, yes, it's a very, it's a deconstructionist, nah. Fucking, I do though, I'm making fun of myself, but that is how I look at these games, because like, if you look at them, again, they don't make any sense, like, on a literal level, but if you look at them, like, subtextually, there's a lot going on there. I'm trying to keep one train of thought at a time. But, like, yeah. Like, every single Metal Gear Solid game was made with the intention of it being the last Metal Gear Solid game. And my favorite one of that was Metal Gear Solid 2. Because Hideo Kojima didn't want to fucking make Metal Gear Solid 2. He was like, "I made Metal Gear Solid 1. I'm done. Series is over. I basically rebooted the fucking thing." And that's what's funny to me, is they didn't reboot the series yet. They might. After this next one, they might. One of my friends had a fear of that, but they haven't rebooted it. Like any other series, any other creative director would have rebooted this back in Metal Gear Solid. But no, Metal Gear Solid is the sequel to Metal Gear 1 and 2. Like, this game series has like 20 years of fucking history behind it. And it's all still canon. It's all still a building narrative. That, again, if you try and look at, like, logically, makes no fucking sense, but the facts still remain. And I just think that's pretty impressive. Like, how many game series can you say that about? How many franchises can you say that about, right? That are still, like, one after the other like that, and still going on. But, like, Metal Gear Solid 2 was, like, is kind of the black sheep of the series. And I like, it is, in a way, my least favorite. But I understand it. You know, like, I respect it, I understand it, it's still measures short, you know? Because, like, Kojima didn't want to make it, but they were like, Metal Gear Solid 1 was a fucking bomb-out motherfucking extremaganza success. Make Metal Gear Solid 2. And he was like, nah! But, like, he had OCD, so he had to do it, because if he didn't do it, someone else would do it, and he was like, no. It was like, with or without you, and he's like, brah. So, like, being the way he is, like, and I totally relate to this, is like, he didn't want to do it, but he still put like 110% effort into that game. Well, like, it's basically a fucking tech demo of what the PS2's hardware could be capable of. It in a weird way, it sent the benchmark for, like, video game technology at the time, in a way that I don't think would have been met until arguably Silent Hill 3. Silent Hill 3 was, like, sort of the next, like, really took advantage of everything the PS2 had to offer. And then Metal Gear Solid 3 came around that time as well, which set the benchmark even higher. But, like, Metal Gear Solid 2 was one that was like, next fucking gen, motherfucker. And, like, but, and like, in a way at the time was, like, painstakingly handcrafted, too. So, like, that's what's funny, is, like, he didn't want to make the fucking game, but he still, like, took the effort to make it everything he could make it be, all things considered. Because, now people might not know this, but that fucking game was rushed out. They like, Konami really came down and was like, you gotta push this out the fucking door, we want to make money off of it. They forced it out for a holiday release, 2001. Reminds me of Knights of the Old Republic 2, which also was rushed out, basically half finished. The game was basically unfinished by the time it was released. And that's a big reason that it's so, like, what the fuck? Because, like, you can really tell where, like, the effort went in to where during that development. Like, you almost feel like this game was made in chronological order, which I don't know if that's common or advisable, but, like, they very clearly made the first level first, and then they made the end of the game last. And you can fucking tell. Because you can tell when the money started fucking running out. And they started going like, just fucking finish it. Just fucking, like, make it playable. Make it, like, something people can play. Fuck it. Just get it out there. It reminds me of fucking, who are the guys who did Neon Genesis Evangelion? And Fooly Cooley? And Gurren Lagann? Those guys. You know them? Also very infamous with their, fucking running out of the budget, by the end of the series. Different circumstances, I guess. But, like, Metal Gear Solid 2 was still, like, successful when it came out, but even at the time, people were like, what the fuck? Like, what? What? So by the time Metal Gear Solid 3 came out, I feel like there was a lot less pressure. You know, like Konami was like, fine, Jesus Christ, just make it. God damn. And Kojima was like, okay, you know what? I got a lot of the angst, I got a lot of the anger out, because, like, a big reason Metal Gear Solid 2's story, like, there's a lot about that game that's like, okay, that's a flaw. There's faults here, and that I attribute that a lot to it being unfinished. But the story, poor, not as well written as it could be, as it was. I still get what it was saying, and I feel like it accomplished that. Could have been written better, but like, Metal Gear Solid 2 is like this game where it's like, there's this really great write-up about it that like says it way better than I could, but it's like this anti-sequel. It's this game where it's like, it intentionally builds up the gamer's like fucking expectations. Because, again, Kojima really resented having to make a sequel. So he was like, fine, I'll make the worst sequel ever. Fuck you. Because it was a game where it's like, it knew what you as a player would expect from a sequel to Metal Gear 1. And it intentionally built that up, and then fucking pulled you out and gave you blue balls. Like, on purpose. It was like, hey, this seems a lot like that part in Metal Gear Solid 1, doesn't it? Only not as good, because sequels are never as good. It did it on purpose. It was intentionally a not as good sequel. That kind of like had fucking like, it's hard to justify it because like you can say it was on purpose, but being a shitty sequel on purpose is still a shitty sequel, you know? So it's like, yeah, you made a bad game on purpose, so good job. It's still not very good. It's still not fun to play. On purpose, but I still don't have fun playing it. That's the conundrum with a game like that. You know, like, I respect it and praise it on an artistic level, and in a way, it had to overcome a lot of fucking obstacles in order to just get made in the first place, considering the fucking corporate structure that it was forced out in by Konami. But at the same time, it's like, I don't have fun playing this fucking game. And by the end of the game, I'm just like, fucking skip. I get it. I fucking get it. Skip. Yeah, Raiden's fucking a fucking proxy for the player, and we're the Patriots, and he's rejecting control of us, and it's all a big metaphor, blah, 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 blah. So then, by the time Metal Gear Solid 3 came out, Konami was like, fine, just make the game. We don't care anymore, just make it. So there was a lot less pressure on that front, and I feel like there's not as many sources on this as there is for Metal Gear Solid 2, that I've seen. Because for Metal Gear Solid 2, you can very clearly see Kojima hated making the game, hated that he was forced to make the game, hated the gamer community who pressured him and sent him, like, all this fucking mail and shit. So, he was, like, Metal Gear Solid 2 was inventing all that. So you feel like by the time he got to Metal Gear Solid 3, he's like, okay, I'm good. I'll make a game that I want to make. That's what Metal Gear Solid 3 feels like. It feels like a game that Hideo Kojima sat down and said, like, this is what the game I want to make. I'm not being forced to. I'm not being pressured to. I have no obligation to. This is just what I want to fucking put my time in and create as an artist. And it comes across. That's a big reason I feel like Metal Gear Solid 3 is so many people's favorite one, because you can feel it. You can feel the heart that was put into that. You know? Like, Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker might have more content, Metal Gear Solid 4 might be technically superior, and in ways more ambitious, but fucking Metal Gear Solid 3 was the game Kojima put his heart and fucking soul into, and you can tell. And it's that ineffable quality that I think a lot of people don't really realize on, like, a fucking mammal brain level. It's that reptile brain, you know, it's the fucking subconscious, it's that primal fucking, like, iceberg fucking underneath the surface that you don't really know about that triggers and goes like, I can see what's happening in front of me here. I can see that, like, fucking love and effort and artistry was put into what's being presented before me. And, like, I feel like a lot of people, even if they aren't really, like, aware of why, even if they can't articulate it, I'm not good at articulating it myself, but, like, most people aren't even aware that it's something to be articulated. But, like, most people can tell the difference between, like, a technically flawless product that was made by committee. You know, a bunch of people in suits sat down and said, this is what will make the game good. And it's a good game, but you're like, it feels like a bunch of guys in suits just sat down and said, make a good game. Like, fucking, like, a good example is, like, I don't like the Game Grumps, but they did, a while back, they did a playthrough of, like, they did, like, 10 videos of them playing fucking the new Super Mario Bros. Games and then didn't fucking finish it because they suck. But where they talked about, like, they fucking hated that game. And I'm not a fan of them either, of those games, but they put it in a way that, like, that's a good example of what I'm talking about. A game that was made by, you know, committee. Where they were like, this game is, like, perfect. You know, it plays great. It looks great. It sounds great. I hate it. That's what I feel, that, like, most people kind of have that sense to them, you know? Like, a technically perfect product, that's a product. You know? You can, you like, it's like the uncanny valley of art. You can just tell the fucking difference. And compared to something that, like, might be inferior or not competently made, but there's so much more to it. You know, like, the artist just put himself in there. The fucking macaroni painting of a fucking 5-year-old who was like, yeah, I'm gonna make the shit out of this fucking macaroni fucking painting, man. Like, fucking yeah. With the vocabulary of a 5-year-old, of course. Like, even that has more, like, soul to it than even a Renaissance painting that was made to pay a fucking bill. Like, they were commissioned to paint those fucking paintings. And they're astronomically gorgeous paintings. But they were made to pay a bill. Compared to someone who made something because they wanted to fucking make it. It's the difference between Star Wars Episode 4 and Star Wars Episode 1, I guess. It's the difference between fucking something that an artist put their blood, sweat, and tears into, and something that was, like, churned out as a product. That's the difference. Ramble. That's what Metal Gear Solid 3 is to me. Metal Gear Solid 3 is the game that Kojima wanted to fucking make. And what's funny is it's the same fucking game as Metal Gear Solid 2. It's a fucking anti-sequel, but it's just it's enjoying itself a lot more, I guess. And that's what made it a little bit easier to swallow. Like, if you play that game, like, if you line up Metal Gear Solid 1, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Metal Gear Solid 3, it's the same fucking game. Like, beat for beat. And hell, Metal Gear Solid 3 has more in common with Metal Gear Solid 2 than most people fucking realize. You play as a character named Jack, who has his codename changed at the beginning of the mission, and there's, like, a prologue mission, the Tanker and the Virtuous mission, that's, like, an hour or so long, where at the end, the main character, like, supposedly dies, but you know they didn't really die, but, like, they were put into a scenario where, like, you could foresee them having died. Snake sinking with the tanker, but you know he lived. And then Snake being thrown off the bridge by the boss and being within spitting distance of a fucking nuke going off, but you know he's fine. And then they're sent in, there's a lot of fucking comparisons. Like, this is a very generalized list. If I had time and really sat down and, like, you know, thought about it a lot, like, more focused on it, I could make a fucking detailed list. But the point is, like, fucking Metal Gear Solid 3 is Metal Gear Solid 2 in the 60s. And it's a prequel, so it doesn't have, like, baggage of continuity. It's a lot more playful with the elements of continuity that were left over. There's a mention of the Patriots and the la 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 and the la la la. That's another thing about fucking Metal Gear Solid 2. Shitty translation. That translation was just half-assed and shitty. Super shitty. You play that game and you're like, that's English. That is borderline fucking English. A good example of that is the la 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 la, where there's just, to be fair, there's no real equivalent to that. The entire point of the la 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 is those vowels, those sounds don't exist in Japanese, because in the Japanese language, L's and R's are just the same thing. Where it's if you try to say in apologies, but if you try to say in Japanese, it'd be it's a you know how the Shigeru there was a fucking guy, Clan of the Grey Wolf, Rue from Clan of the Grey Wolf did a fucking talked about that in one of his videos, where he talked about how in Japanese L's and R's are the same fucking thing. Anyway, that's the meaning behind la la la. It's literally words that don't exist. That's the fucking point. And they're whoever translated that shit just didn't give enough of a shit. And then there's another part where Emma Emmerich's you know how there's 26 letters in the alphabet? There could have been 30. And the Patriots just suppressed the knowledge. How would you know? That's a really bad example, dude. That makes sense when you're talking about kanji with that fucking alphabet, but it doesn't make sense when you're talking about the English alphabet. There's a fucking the etymology, the linguistic fucking origin of this shit predates the Patriots by hundreds of fucking years. You're an idiot. So yeah. Tangent. Anyway. But the only time Metal Gear Solid 3 acknowledges its continuity is when it's making fun of it. At the beginning of the game, because at the end of Metal Gear Solid 2, people are like, what the fuck are the Patriots? What the fuck? Oh my god. And again, that was intended to be the last fucking game. It's supposed to have these questions that have no answers. And so people are going, asking these questions, and then Metal Gear Solid 3 comes out, and it's here's your fucking, thunder, flash, that you give to your contact. You're supposed to say the Patriots. Who are the Patriots? And the answer is the la 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 la. And it's just joking at the idea of this game giving answers to continuity of the previous games just because it's a prequel. The entire point of the game is it has references, it has setups, it has winks and nods, but it doesn't really give a shit. It's not really trying to tie into the rest of the series. It's just a completely self-contained thing that has Metal Gear Solid on the title, and Metal Gear Solid is directly mentioned, but that's not the story that's being told. And there are funny little Kojima-esque fuck yous to the audience, going what, you wanted answers? This is a prequel, it's supposed to explain everything. Fuck you, I'm just making the game that I felt like fucking making. I felt like making a fucking James Bond game. Fuck you. That's what that game is. I love it for it. And fucking makes you cry at the ending every fucking time. That's what. I defy you to name me someone who's not Darkside Phil who didn't fucking cry at the end of fucking Metal Gear Solid 3. To this day, I can't sit through that little ending cutscene without getting like fucking like the tear ducts are fucking flicking on, you know? They're flicking on. Might not be tears, but they're flicking on, you know? Anyway, and again, I feel like that's a big reason, like, Metal Gear Solid 3 to this day is at the top of everyone's list in terms of that series, because, like, it's not perfect. It's incredibly flawed. In some ways, it's, technically speaking, the worst game in the series. Like, it's completely ridiculous. Like, especially if you consider, like, Snake Eater, not Subsistence, not the HD collection, the original game as it was originally released, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, was pretty fucking terrible to play. Because, like, it didn't adapt completely. Like, it still stuck with that, like, static camera angles from the first two games, but, like, the rest of the technology had kind of moved on. Like, if you play, like, the way to play this game is with Subsistence or the HD collection, because then you have the free look camera. But before that, like, you still had the static camera, and it's fucking abysmal. And there's the fact that there's the camo system, the fucking eating, hunting, and the stamina gauge, and the fucking cure screen. Like, all great ideas, really, really poorly executed. Like, it's really ambitious the way, like, you can catch food in that game, and over time it'll rot. So, like, eventually, if you, like, leave the game off for a week and then come back, the food will just be completely rotten, and you'll have to get new food. And you need food because your stamina gauge goes down as you play, and you gotta eat to recover it. And when you get injured in fights, you'll be damaged on your body, and you gotta go to the cure screen to apply fucking first aid. Like, suture yourself up and shit. And, like, you're sneaking around in the jungle, so you have the camo score, and you can go into the camo fucking screen and, like, change your camo on the spot to better fit the situation. And it's really fucking stupid garbage that doesn't play very well. Because, like, so think about this logically. Like, you're crawling on the floor, and you're crawling over a patch of mud, and then suddenly you get to a patch of grass. You have to pause, and your camo index just drops. Your fucking camo score just goes from 80 to fucking 30. Because the patch of thing you're on is a completely different color from what you're wearing. So you have to pause the game, flick down to the camo menu, open the camo menu, flick through whether or not it's face paint or fucking clothing, and then flick through and try and find which fucking camo you want to wear. And then you go, and then Snake just instantly change, in the logic of the game, like, time freezes, and Snake just rips his clothes off and instantly puts a new outfit on. Like, have you seen his clothing in that game? It's, like, multi-layered, motherfucker. Like, this shit would take minutes to put that shit on. He just instantly pops into a new outfit on the spot. And, like, it's really ludicrous and silly. And, like, every time you get injured, you have to, like, you're in the middle of a boss fight. You're in the middle of fighting a boss. You get shot. Now you gotta pause the game, completely breaking the flow of the fight and the pacing, and go into the cure screen and fix that fucking injury. And at least when I play, I guess maybe if you're playing it for the first time and you're kind of just running around, getting lost, sucking at the game, maybe it'll matter more, but stamina was just never a big deal to me. I could play for hours and hours and hours without ever needing to eat a fucking bite. And again, maybe that's just me, because I played that game like 100 fucking times and I know what I'm doing. But, like, it's just never a system that really mattered the way I played it. So, like, ambitious design choices, incredibly poorly implemented. Like, those are huge flaws of that game. And yet no one gives a shit. No one cares. It doesn't bother you. And that's what speaks to the strengths of that game. Like, it's so flawed. In many ways, it's the most flawed game in the entire series. but it doesn't bother you. No one cares. The most technically flawed game in the series is everyone's fucking favorite. That speaks to how good that fucking game is. It's a game where, like, I don't even know what else I can compare it to. Like, I was gonna say it's an unpolished diamond, but it's not. It's incredibly polished. But, like, it's got sharp edges. I don't fucking even know how to describe it. Like, Metal Gear Solid 3 is. Like, there's no other comparison. It's completely unique. Sorry. Like, yeah, like, and that's another thing I like about it, is I can spend, like, 2 minutes just shitting on that game, talking about how terrible it is, and like, that's how much I love it. Because, like, I like Metal Gear Solid 2, but I can't sit down and talk about all the bad parts about it. Because I don't really like it that much. It's shit that I love, that I can just spend hours breaking down what a piece of shit it is. That's how I operate, I guess. But, yeah, again, Metal Gear Solid 3, best game in the series, was gonna be the last one. Like, that was it. He was like, no, I'm done. And they're like, no, make another one. He's like, I don't want to. It's done. Finished. Go away. And they're like, no, make a fucking another one. He's like, Metal Gear Solid 2 all over again. He's being pressured into making another entry in the series, and he doesn't really want to make it. Like, fucking, like, in a big fucking way, Metal Gear Solid 3 was his magnum opus. I don't know if he sees it that way, but, like, that was the game he wanted to make, and he had fun making. And, like, he was done. Like in that same way, like, after Metal Gear Solid 2, he got all his rage out, and so there was nothing left but, like, what I want to fucking do. Then he got all his joy out, and there was nothing left but, like, resignation. You have to make another game. And he's like, and so he fucking makes it. And again, it's Metal Gear Solid 2 2.0, I guess you could say. Although a lot different. It's not really doing the same thing, because, like, Metal Gear Solid 2 was like an anti-sequel. Metal Gear Solid 4 is like really bitter fan service. It's like really fucking aggravated, obligated, frustrated fan service. I like the way I describe Metal Gear Solid 4 is like, this is what you wanted, right? This is what you said you wanted, right? Like from the most fundamental level, we want to play as Solid Snake again. Like, fucking Big Boss was cool, but, like, Solid Snake's the guy we liked from the first game. We want to play as Solid Snake again. And Christian was like, oh, okay, you want to play Solid Snake? He's an old man now, and he's on a suicide mission, and he's just constantly being broken down physically and emotionally as he goes through the game, and at the end of the game, he kills himself. This is what you wanted, right? You wanted to play a Solid Snake again. Here you go. He's an old fucking man who's deteriorating right before your eyes. And everyone spends the entire game shitting on him. This is what you wanted, right? Here's your fan service, guys. and we want to go back to Shadow Moses was amazing. We love Shadow Moses. Oh, Shadow Moses, you like Shadow Moses? Okay, you go back to Shadow Moses in Act 4, and the entire base is completely run down and busted and out of date and not as fun as you remember playing it. And and it's gonna sink into the ocean eventually. So that place you love so much, it's gonna be gone in like a year or so. This is what you wanted, right? This is what you wanted, right? You like Shadow Moses, you guys? Fuck you! It's like the anti-fan service. It's like it's the cheeky anime girl with a dick. That's what it's like. This is what you wanted, right? No, well, fuck you. That's what it is. That's what that game is, and it's on a certain sense that's admirable, but on another level, it's like it still kind of has to tie things up. Like that's what Metal Gear Solid 4 suffers from the most out of every other game, because like I said way before, this is not a series you take literally. Like if you try and like fucking look at this series on a literal face value level, it makes no fucking sense. And that's why Metal Gear Solid 4 makes no fucking sense, because it's forced to take these games that don't make sense on a literal level, that were like meta commentaries, self-contained stories that like exist on their own and don't really contribute to a wider story, and were more symbolic and satirical than anything, and it's forced to like construct a satisfying conclusional narrative to them, and it doesn't succeed because it's not possible. It's like fucking like recite all the digits of pi. Like, yeah, technically there's an end, like there's a final digit of pi, but it's not really feasible, I guess you could say. Like, all things considered, it did the best it could have possibly done. It took a fucking what are those called? In churches? Stained glass? Right? Is that what it's called? It took a stained glass picture that was shattered all over the floor and had all the color drained out of it. So all the pieces just look like the same color now. And it put them together into a picture. And that alone is a miracle. It might not be a good picture, but it fucking did it. So I guess that's good enough. Like, you put a bow on it. The series is over. Like, chronologically speaking, the tale of Metal Gear Solid has a beginning, middle, and end. Well, almost middle and end now. Like, you can play this after September. You can play this series from beginning to end, and it will have a beginning to end. It's not supposed to. It was never supposed to. And it makes no sense. But you did it. That's what Metal Gear Solid 4 was. It was the game where he was forced to capitulate to fans in the most backhanded fuck you way possible, and it was the game where he was forced to finish the series. Like, to the point where Kojima wanted to have, like, a way darker ending. Where, like, originally, at the end of the game, Snake and Otacon were going to turn themselves into the government, and they were going to be executed by a firing squad. That was the original ending to the game. And then the Koji Pro Productions team was like, dude. And so it was like, fine, I'll make a slightly less depressing ending where Snake kills himself instead. Happy now? And they were like, no? And that's another thing, is like, at the, when the credits start rolling, and then they stop rolling, and then the game continues, or it's just more cutscene, and Big Boss shows up. And that's honestly one of my favorite scenes, even though it's total garbage, if you look at it at face value. Because it's a scene, like I said, I just ran, and now I'm sitting down and talking for a fucking hour, and my fucking water's empty. Because it's the scene where Big Boss shows up and goes like, hey, it wasn't actually Solidus, and also Ocelot wasn't really possessed, he hypnotized himself, and I'm gonna talk about numbers, and here's 0. And again, on a literal face value analysis, totally fucking stupid. But if you look at, like, between the lines, you can see, again, it's just Kojima's fucking with people. It's making fun of the entire concept, where it's like, it's like, his games had, cause like, at the end of Metal Gear Solid 3, there was a big twist. where like you were like the whole game you were like, oh, the boss is a traitor, and then at the end, Eva gives you a choice like, no, she wasn't a traitor the whole time, and it's aping on that. It's aping on the like post credits stinger twist that to a lesser extent Metal Gear Solid 2 did, and that Metal Gear Solid 3 was kind of like gut wrenchingly famous for. And it's like doing the same thing, but not really on purpose. Or it's going like, oh, you wanted a twist? Here's a twist. It's dumb. You wanted resolution to why all this happened? Here you go. It makes no sense, and it's stupid. Oh, and by the way, you guys love Big Boss, right? Big Boss, that guy everyone liked from Metal Gear Solid 3, and you wanted to find out, like, why he went from being that cool guy in Metal Gear Solid 3 to being a bad guy. And you wanted to see him again, right? He dies. And like, there's a line where, like, Big Boss is, like, fucking dying. And, like, he sits down, and he tries to light a cigar, and he just can't. Because, like, he's just dead. And Solid Snake, like, lights the cigar for him, and he's like, yeah. And then, like, his final words before he dies is like, this is good, isn't it? I love that line. I love that line, because that's talking to the audience. That's where I get this is what you wanted, right? This is good, isn't it? You wanted Big Boss back, right? You wanted to see that resolution between Big Boss and Solid Snake. You wanted to see this character you all love again, right? This is what you wanted. This is good, isn't it? Dead. In a way, Metal Gear Solid 4 is a work of genius. But also in a way, it's not great. And the only reason it's not the worst one in the series is because Metal Gear Solid 2 exists. See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, games I don't like, I spend more time talking about the things that are good about them than the things that were bad. I don't know what's wrong with me. And then, like, Peace Walker, I feel like the game where, like, Kojima's just like, fuck it! Like, I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want, fuck everyone, fuck all of you. But, like, it was being made at the same time Metal Gear Solid 4 was being made. Like, a team of, a separate team from the one that was making Metal Gear Solid 4 was making Peace Walker around the same time. And originally during production it was being called Metal Gear Solid 5, but then, like, eventually they went like, it's being made for the PSP, so, like, it's not a real entry in the series. We don't want to make people feel like they have to, like, this is an essential chronological entry in the series because, like, we're just making it for the PSP, whatever. That backfired in retrospect. But Peace Walker is a game where, like, Kojima, like, kind of, like, shed a little bit of baggage at the door. He was just, like, he took it a lot less seriously. And that's not the same thing as, like, him wanting to make it and having fun making it like he did with MGS3. I just feel like he shed a lot more baggage, you know? Like, it's a T-rated game. There's fucking Monster Hunter. There's literally, like, 5 missions in this game where you're just Monster Hunter. Like, literally, like, Kojima was playing Monster Hunter. He was like, I want to make a Monster Hunter game, and so he made Peace Walker. Literally, that's what he did. And like I said, it's inhibited a lot. Not inhibited, but, like, it's defined by the platform it was developed for. And that facilitates a lot of things, and it, you know, kind of smothers others. But, like, honestly, Peace Walker is the game I have the least to talk about. Like, every other game I can, like, analyze and break down in, like, a meta-contextual analysis of how it's a commentary on the games industry as a whole and, like, a personal espousal of Kojima as an auteur. But, like, Peace Walker's game where it's like, yeah, fuck. Monster Hunter, yeah. Red equals bad guys, and yellow equals good guys. Missions, extras. And that's sort of how I feel whenever I try and talk about Peace Walkers. I'm like, I got nothing. I got nothing for you on this one, guys. I did it. I finished it. I got my mother base up to like level 99999 99999999999, and I finished it. I made all the struts, and I got the secret ending. Like, I have more to say about Ground Zeroes than I do about fucking Peace Walker. I think I've played Ground Zeroes for longer too. I have like fucking 13 hours on Ground Zeroes. 20-minute demo, 14 hours. Fuck you. Anyway. Holy shit. Oh, I can't wait for Phantom Pain. Like, that's what this is. Like, these are just the thoughts running through my head, and there's so many thoughts more. There's many thoughts that are thinks. I thinked them. I thought the think. And then I said it good bad. I said it. Fuck, I could just fucking talk for hours. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak. You know, like... I feel like it'd be easier to talk about, like, specific... Like, be able to, like, categorize my thoughts a little bit better if I was, like, playing the game. And then I would be playing the game, and I wouldn't be able to talk, as has been evident in the past. What's really great about this game is, like, fucking... I really hope one day, like from a historical perspective, people are gonna look back and, like... The benefit of hindsight is gonna help this series, I think. It's already helped Metal Gear Solid 2. Like, Metal Gear Solid 2 is a game that, like, at the time was celebrated and reviled, but over time, people have kind of, like, given it a re-examination. Especially since, like, again, still kind of, like, as a game, but, like, the story and the themes it talks about have only gotten more relevant as the years have gone by. Like, Metal Gear Solid, the major driving theme of, like, censorship of the internet and memes that's talked about at the end of that game has more relevance now in 2014 than it did when it was made in 2001. Like, you play that game now and you sit through the end and you're like, holy shit, how'd he know? How'd he fucking know? And it's weird and cool and boring. So, and like, one of the things I hope people recognize in a re-examination is how Solid Snake and Naked Snake Big Boss are two very different characters. Like, I don't know if people recognize that as readily as it's kind of being made apparent, because, like, the two characters almost start at, like, parallel ends and just kind of go in the opposite direction, you know? Like, Solid Snake starts out as a very dark figure. He's very, like, negative and fucked up in the fucking head. Where he's like, he's antisocial. He doesn't have any fucking, like, he has nothing but apathy for, like, the greater good, or, like, his government, or whatever, like, the things that people would normally, like, go on missions like this for. Like, you would go on a mission to fucking stop Metal Gear and protect your country and shit. Like, Solid Snake doesn't give a shit. He was basically blackmailed into doing it. He just didn't give a shit. It was, like, just a job. Like, that's something that persists. And, like, when he says it in Metal Gear Solid 4, he's wrong. But it's relevant to how he was in Metal Gear Solid 1, where he's like, I'm not a hero. I never was. I'm just an old killer. Hired to do some wet work. And that's what he was. Like, he was, again, Metal Gear Solid was a sequel to Metal Gear 1 and 2. Where it was known what he'd done. He'd taken on fucking Metal Gear. He'd fucking infiltrated Outer Heaven. as a rookie and took down Metal Gear and took down Big Boss, and then Zanzibar Land, same thing. And so he was praised as an icon and a hero, and then Metal Gear Solid happened. And he's like, I don't fucking care. Fuck all of you. Fuck off. I got dogs. I got fucking dogs, motherfucker. Dogs. Mushing dogs. Anyway. And then, he goes to the fucking Shadow Moses. And a lot of it stems from the fact that he was sort of supposed to be, a commentary on, he was the Trevor of his day. You know how in GTA 5, Trevor is oh, he's the average GTA player. Look how clever we are. That's what Solid Snake was at the time. He was, and Raiden, and people didn't get it. It was too subtle for its own good. So Raiden was even more of a blatant example of that. But he was you, hey player, fuck you, you're a terrible person for enjoying this kind of game. That's what Solid Snake was. There's various points in that game where he's like, I don't give a fuck about other people. I don't have a purpose. I don't have a reason to live. The only time I have found joy in life is when I was cheating death on the battlefield. I've never cared about other people. And even the bad guys go man, you're worse than we are. You think we're bad? Look at you. You're a fucking asshole. And at the end of the game, Liquid's you enjoy all the killing. Don't you? And Solid Snake's yeah. Not untrue. And it's only, and he gets betrayed by all his superior, and that's another thing, fucking Metal Gear Solid did Spec Ops The Line before Spec Ops The Line did it. Because by the end of that game, everybody betrayed, man, fed up with this world. All your superiors fucking lied to you, and you've been sent here on false pretenses, and your best friend was a fucking liar, and you're not actually doing what we thought you were doing, and your entire purpose was for naught in the first place, because the thing you thought you were doing to stop the thing caused the thing, and now the thing happened, and you didn't actually need to do the thing in the first place. You doing the thing has caused the situation to be way worse than if you hadn't even been here in the first place. And you're just sent here by the fucking government trying to cover up their fucking mess, to do corrupt government shit, and you were duped, and everybody lied to you. And yet you kept doing it, even after all the secrets came out. Even after it was revealed that you just fucked up the whole situation. You kept playing the fucking game. Because you don't care. You don't actually care. You want to pretend that you're a fucking hero. You want to pretend that you're some cool action hero gonna save the world, but you don't actually care about that. You're just a fucking piece of shit who wants to kill people. That's how you get your rocks off, you fucking piece of shit. That's what that game was. That was the entire fucking, meta fucking, deconstruction of that fucking original game, where it's hey, player, fuck you. Hideo Kojima's entire career is based on telling the player who bought his game to go fuck themselves. But in terms of, Solid Snake's character, that's where he starts. And then by the end of the game, he's in a very different place. Even Hideo Kojima even said in a fucking interview where he's Solid Snake's the only hero of this series. Everyone else rode their road to hell, paved with good intentions, but they're demons now. They're bad people. You cannot consider them a hero. Solid Snake's the only one you can consider a hero by the end of the series. He got self-awareness, and he found a purpose in life. He found a reason to live. He doesn't fight for the sake of fighting anymore. He doesn't fight because he enjoys killing people anymore. He fights for a reason. He has fighting is all he's good at. It's all he knows how to do. This guy does not have a lot to contribute to society beyond his skills as a soldier, as a killer. But at least he can do something with that. At least he can have a purpose. At least he can have a reason. At least he can leave something behind for the next generation. so that they won't repeat the same mistakes he did. So they won't have to suffer the sins that his generation left behind. That's his whole driving force in Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 4. He's like, you gotta have something you can leave behind. You gotta have a legacy. And you can't just tell people that. Like, that was the critical flaw with the boss. Like, people didn't fucking get it. Like, she explained her legacy. She told Big Boss and Zero, like, this is what my and other people, to be honest. She was like, this is what I want my legacy to be. This is what I want the world to be, based on my experiences. And everyone heard that, and was like, and just had their own completely fucked up interpretation, and fucked it up. And the world was driven into hell. The state of the world, the fucking agony that and suffering hundreds of millions of people went through, was because of the boss and what she related to Big Boss and Zero. Like, really, all the problems in the series root back to her. And it's unintentional. She wanted a better world. She wanted good. And the people who followed her will and tried to make her legacy come true also wanted good. But they fucked it up. And they became fucked up, and they fucked everything up for fucking everyone. And without realizing it, Solid Snake learns from that. And goes like, I'm not just gonna sit here and like, hey, like, write my fucking memoirs and tell people this is what I want them to take away from my life. No, he fucking shows them. He leaves an example for people to look at and recognize and follow. That's why in Metal Gear Solid 2, the game ends with him having this existential speech about his outlook on life. And then Metal Gear Solid 4 is him doing it. Like, he has comparatively little dialogue. And he doesn't, like, have a sit-down lecture about his outlook on life. He listens to other people, and he absorbs what they have to offer him. But he doesn't really respond. He doesn't, like, lay anything out the way they do. Like, he learns from the mistakes of the generation before him. And what he wants is for the new generation to learn from their mistakes, to learn from his mistakes, and to see what he's done and like make a better world. Like that's his whole part. Like, you know, and at the end he gives the world a clean slate. Thanks to his efforts, he gives the world a clean slate, and he says like, okay, this is your world now. It's cleansed of the sins of what I've done and what those before me and before them have done. It's all on you now. Meryl, Sonny, this new generation. This is your world now. You're the ones who, and Raiden, you decide what you do with this world. And I can only hope, like, I've left a good enough example that you'll learn not to make those same mistakes. And that's what makes him a hero, because he accomplishes that. He by living by example, he has set down the framework for maybe not a perfect world, but a better one. A better one than what those before him had made. And that's what makes him a hero. Compared to Big Boss, who starts in a completely different place. He starts out as almost a blank slate. He starts out as very pure, very naive. Like, he doesn't have a dark, mysterious backstory where, like, he was born from the genes of a soldier, he was created in a lab to kill, he has an expiration date, he killed his father. Like, that was Solid Snake. Big Boss doesn't have that. He's like just your average Joe, who has some genetic skill, who has a genetic inclination, but, like, what made him was his experiences. He, like, went out and became a legend of his own making, based on what he learned and went through firsthand. But, like, the difference in his character is, like, he starts out naive, green, idealistic, and just over the course of history just slowly starts to degenerate and break down as a human being. Like, he starts out going like, I'm just a soldier. I don't care about the politics. I complete the mission. I'm reasonably patriotic. I serve my country. I serve America. I don't care who's in charge or what their orders are. I'll follow the orders. I'll do the mission. I'm a soldier. And he talks to the boss, who's like, you don't fucking know anything. Like, it doesn't, like, who's gonna give you the orders? Like, and, like, that's her entire point, is like, there is no such thing as an enemy or an ally in the absolute sense. Like, the people you're fighting today might become your allies tomorrow, and the people you consider your best friends right now might become a mortal enemy somewhere down the line. And it, like, as you can see through Big Boss's story, that's true. Like, fucking Ocelot was a fucking rival at worst in Metal Gear Solid 3, but by the end, and again by Phantom Pain, he's a stalwart ally. Like after trying to kill him for the entirety of Metal Gear Solid 3, at the end of the series, Ocelot is the one trying to enforce his will. Like, he is loyal to Big Boss and no one else. Like, they spent an entire game trying to kill each other, and at the end of the series, Ocelot's like, I'm your man from do or die, from to the end of my days, and he was. Whereas, Major Zero started out as his best friend, and they were comrades, they were allies, they fucking talked about movies and James Bond together, and then by the end of, but very shortly thereafter, Major Zero became the big bad of the series. He became fucking Big Brother, and he ruled the world, and they were enemies. Like, Big Boss and Cypher, the Patriots, were enemies. And, like, you see it right there. Fucking, like, what she said was true. There's no such thing as an enemy in the absolute terms. And, like, who gives the orders to you? Like, you gotta have more than that. You gotta have more than just fight. I'm a soldier, I gotta fight. You gotta have more than that. You gotta have something you bring with you. You gotta have something that, like, drives you. You can't just fight for the sake of fighting. Or like, you gotta have something more. And that's what Snake, like, that's the example Snake exhibits, but Big Boss doesn't follow that. Like, after he kills the boss, he just dies inside. Like, that person doesn't exist anymore, and he learned nothing. He learned absolutely fucking nothing from her example. And he just starts, and like, that's the difference between him and Solid Snake in the biggest way. Is like, Solid Snake started out fighting for the sake of fighting, and then found a reason to fight. Big Boss started out fighting for a reason, and then just degenerated to the point of like, I'm a soldier, I have no purpose in life beyond fighting. There's no reason. There doesn't need to be a reason. No ideology, no greater good, no just cause, no philosophy, no nation. I just fight because that's what I am. And if I have no fight, then I have nothing. Peace is purgatory. And war is outer heaven. Like, that's the world he wants to make. A world where people define themselves through conflict, where the conflict is all people have. People like him, projecting hardcore, by the way, where he's like, I have nothing in this world but fighting. She lied to me. She abandoned me. All my friends are dead. Fuck all of you. I'm just gonna fight. For what reason? None really. Like, revenge and Phantom Pain. But, like, in the end of the day, he's just like, The world needs to be driven to eternal conflict, so soldiers like me and like the boss, who have nothing in their lives but the fight, will always have a reason to live. Because without war, soldiers have no reason to live. So he starts out having a reason and then going to fight, and then fighting becomes his reason to fight. Fighting in and of itself is the reason. And that's the fucking like parallel. Like they start out at opposite ends, intersect, and then go the other way. Where at the end of the day, Solid Snake becomes like the enforcer of the boss's original will, whereas Big Boss kind of like rejects her completely, and where or Zero completely misinterprets it and just does fucked up shit. Big Boss eventually just goes, "Fuck you, I'm done." Like he has her bandana, he's just like, "Fuck, I'm done. I have no, I have no connection to that anymore. It's gone. I'm already a demon." And like that's, I don't know if it was intentional, but like that's the way their characters kind of shaped up through the series. And like a lot of people like Big Boss more than Solid Snake, and that's just because Big Boss had better games on average. Like Metal Gear Solid was the best, was the one that was like is a classic. Metal Gear hasn't aged well. It's basically the worst game of the series. It's it's good. Like the worst Metal Gear game is still leagues above, but it's still eh. Metal Gear 2 is genuinely good. He only has that tanker section at the beginning of Metal Gear Solid 2, and then there's Metal Gear Solid 4, which is just the weird one, I guess. So like on average, Big Boss like Solid Snake's been in more games, but Big Boss has been in more better games that everyone has played. So people like think they like him more. And to be fair, like in a way, he is like everyone loves a Walter White. That's what Big Boss is. He's Walter White. He's a character who starts out pure and good and just becomes a fucking demon. But like I don't know. Like as someone who is into that kind of shit, into like character development, I guess. Solid Snake going from a piece of shit to a good guy is equally, and it's subtle. It's low key too, and that's also something a reason people might not, because like it's subtextual and it's like gradual and it's not. Again, this is where I put my pretentious hat on. Like it goes over most people's heads in a way, but like you could have said that about Metal Gear Solid 2, right? But again, we've gotten far enough away from it that people look back and they appreciate it a little bit more for what it was. And that's what I hope for with this series. Now that it's gonna be over, wink wink, in September, with Phantom Pain being the last one, wink wink, uh, maybe 20 years from now, people can look back at this series from beginning to end as a whole, and and like I include myself in that. Like there's things in these games, in this series, that we haven't seen, we haven't looked for to find yet because we're too close to it. Like it's not history yet. We're still living it, so people don't really see that. But eventually, I hope fucking video games. They're really good. Fucking Metal Gear Solid. I'm gonna play Metal Gear Solid now. If you watched all this, you're fucking weird. But thanks. Love you.